Something that has always fascinated me is the process we perform as humanity to ensure that the essence, imagery, and understanding of our world, as it was historically, and as it is in the present that slips into the historical record, is preserved. We fight, paint, print, place, copy, and pace every possible memory. We collect and gather as much information as possible to be placed in a museum, a gallery, a server in the desert, or our parents' garage in a crate, all in the hope that the information and acts of creation we do every day are preserved. We want these moments to be recompiled in the future and reminisced upon by people we'll never meet. This is the artist's conundrum. To create is to continuously confront the fact that everything you make will eventually be lost. Like a chef who watches their perfect meal be devoured. Yet we continue to create to try and form some mark or impact on our tiny sector of the world, and somehow contribute to the collective consciousness of all those creating and consuming around us. So, what do I do with all my furry art? I've been drawing since I was a kid, as I assume many of you have. If I went to go ask my mum right now if she had any art from my childhood, she'd probably say that it's in a box somewhere. I started getting gifted art supplies when my parents first realized that I started putting pen to paper and that I was creating narratives on a page. I bought my first drawing tablet when I was 16 with the high hopes of one day working for a company that I will not name, and knowing that if I wanted to make it professionally, I'd have to get with the times. And also because every furry I saw on DeviantArt had one, and I desperately wanted to be that cool. I've been what most people would consider a professional artist for about a decade, and I fully committed to that when I started doing my university degree in 2019. I studied illustration, animation, character design, graphics design, photography, comic work, you name it. Here's a fun fact. My final uni project was a furry comic about polyamory because I was newly out and figuring it out, and I did that through a furry comic. I started collecting all my uni pieces and the furry art that I was making into one big folder around the same time I started at uni. It got very full very quickly. I knew that I'd want these pieces somewhere for personal references, but also in a weird way to kind of tell myself that I was actually doing something. It's honestly hard being the sole creator of your body of work, especially when you're making it a prolific rate. And that was the weird thing about being a digital artist. I had traditional training, I was classically trained, but the format that I was making in was fairly new and honestly still is. It felt like yelling into an empty yet somehow oversaturated void. It's like everyone was doing it that I knew, but then when I tried to talk to professionals, no one had any idea what I meant. Funny story, when I first tried to describe to a family friend the kind of art that I was doing digital art, they kind of thought that I was making what we now consider as generative art. Like I was letting a computer make it for me and I was just telling it what to do, not drawing every single line and painting in every single color. Every time I would save a file to that big folder or I'd post a piece of art on social media, it felt weirdly inconsequential. It felt like work. Like I was not just doing something because I actually wanted to do it. It was like I was doing it because everybody expected me to post it. Everyone expected me to put it somewhere. As if I wasn't doing it for myself. If I wanted to be an artist, I had to be known as such. As if a jury of my peers would come along and dictate if I was a true artist or not. I couldn't decide that for myself. I had to be christened by my peers as a worthy artist, as if I didn't already have that by being the creator of the work. I remember the sideways glances and the scoffs I would get from my peers and other professionals because I was drawing furry art, as if my anthropomorphic work made my work lesser, as if it made me lesser. My work already didn't get considered real art because I was doing it digitally. But now, because I was drawing furries, it was somehow even worse. Like I had condemned myself to a lifetime of never being seen as a real artist. So I was stuck in this endless repeating cycle.
I would create a piece, I would post it in the hopes that someone would see it and tell me that it's all right, and then go to my university classes and feel diminished and scoffed at for the work that I was creating. Rinse, repeat. But that was all years ago. I've graduated, I got a fancy piece of paper to prove it, and I still have a huge folder on my desktop of just art from about 7 years of work, just sitting there collecting dust. It's nice to know that it's all in there, but I feel like I've neglected it. I feel like I've done a disservice to my work as its creator. So this year I set myself a little challenge. I was going to take those 7 years of work, including those kinds of pieces. What can I say? I'm a furry artist. It's in our blood to make that kind of work. And put it online. Or at least try to. Try to preserve it. Try to archive it somewhere. It was through this process that I realized that there aren't really good systems in place for archiving digital art, or even art in general. I think the systems that we have in place right now to preserve work as it is kind of fail us. But the archive itself isn't really what this video is about. In fact, the archive is there. It's in the link in the description. You can go look at it. Just a little content warning about the kind of stuff that you might see. What I really want to talk about is the systems that we have in place for art preservation and how they don't really work the way that they should. And a lot of them are owned by conglomerates and corporations that really shouldn't have a say over what art is. They have certain agendas. Oh, thank God. I said the word gender in a video essay and I thought someone was going to knock on my door. What I want to talk about is what I've learned through this process of archival. And kind of, honestly, how it's changed my entire perspective of myself as an artist. Come with me.
You can sum me up in a handful, boxed in and I can't feel my fingertips.
Check, 1, 2. Your work is vital to the continued existence of the human race. Kinda. Let me explain. What I mean is everything you make and create, every art piece, every brushstroke, is a part of history the second after you make it. Every scribble on paper, every unlistenable breakcore beat, every raindrop on a canvas on the piece that you're creating is a part of the history of that piece, and thus is important to human history, because art is a reflection of our human experience of life. Yeah, even the furry. Your presence at the table of life changes the board state, and every card of experience you place down should and deserves to be recorded. Do you think this Magic the Gathering metaphor will make sense to the trans girls in the audience? Change the board state. That's what history means. Man, I hope so. And I earnestly mean everything. The process of archival asks you to look outside of yourself. It's not about how you feel about the work you're creating. It's about the work itself and the importance of keeping it as a part of the record. Its context is valuable. Your context is valuable.
Cesar Brandy was an art critic and historian who developed practical theories for the preservation of classical art that are still used as a baseline in conservation to this day. Sebastiano Barresi, in his paper Dreaming of a Universal Approach, Brandy's Theory of Restoration and Conservation of Contemporary Art, outlines Brandy's theory of restoration as follows.
1. The unacceptability of creative conservation. That is, a conservator must never attempt to substitute the artist, to imitate their style and to interpret the work subjectively, especially when it comes to filling in lacunas. 2. The interpretive preservation of patina, that is, the necessity to avoid interventions that may conceal the real age of an artwork by removing the signs of the passage of time on it. 3. The complete reversibility of any conservation work. 4. The need to proceed, always case by case.
We are in an incredibly special artistic moment. I know it doesn't feel like it because of all the AI slop and the corporations trying to tell us that our work doesn't mean anything, but I really think that right now is an incredibly unique moment for people who are creating art. It's a moment where our newest pieces and our magnum opuses... Opioids? can exist in context with each other simultaneously. By preserving your work, not due to its quality, but because of its context as you as an artist, you preserve your process and the process of growth. Its contextual significance amongst a body of work is a really special thing for an artist to be able to take advantage of. This is why I'm such a firm believer of make shitty art, because there's no such thing. Art is a moment, an experience, a contextual idea made manifest. Work that is made by hands and minds has value. The importance of the human essence has become infinitely more important in a post-generative AI world. Your work needs you. We need shitty music, we need shitty books, we need shitty art, we need bad paintings. We need it all. For us. The world needs as much work as you're willing to create, and it needs it right now. Because it's yours and you made it. And history needs you archiving and preserving every one of the pieces you make. The limit on your creations does not exist.
So turn me inside out till it's pouring from my mouth.
Contending with our digital age and modern technology means contending with fabrication. It also means we need to recognize where these systems fail us. It's all well and good to have a let's preserve everything mindset, but how do we do that? The way our systems and digital spaces are constructed means we have to contend with the fragility of these systems too. Social media is owned by people who could simply choose to wipe accounts if they wanted. They get to decide what's allowed on their site. Companies remove digital games from storefronts and take away disk drives from our consoles and remove headphone jacks from our phones. These online spaces have censorships and shadow bans that mean that they can suppress whatever content they don't deem is worth being on their platform. It brings me back to being at uni, being told that my art isn't worth anything because it's furry art. What if Zuckerberg one day decides that he doesn't want furry art on his platform? Where do I put it? Where do the years of posts go if one person decides that my work isn't worth being somewhere? Where does yours go? Artists are necessary for the continuation of human history and human knowledge and culture and experience and touching into the celestial idea of what it means to be human. And we can't do that if there's strict rules and regulations about the kind of work that's allowed to exist online. How do we touch the infinite if the infinite is limited? Art cannot be restricted by specific regulations and rules other than that exist within its medium. There are artistic rules, but they're guidelines. They're ways in which we understand and create work. Art is not a cop, but the people who own social media sure do like them. Artists need the space to exact their will upon their art, and we really don't have that in online spaces. This is where the limit is. An external force placing a frame upon what is allowed to be art and what is allowed to be shown to the masses, forced upon us by digital frames that we must display within. That's no art gallery. That's suppression. If your work is considered too political or risque or anything that goes against a site's terms of service, your archival efforts can just be ripped away. I honestly even feel this with my own online archive. Sure, websites like Furry and E621 have more lax rules and have a far greater range of the kind of content that we can place upon their archives, which does allow artists to have somewhere to put their work. But because of the controversial nature of the work that gets put up on these websites, they're actually even more at risk. They're at risk of flame wars and boycotting from people who don't want that kind of content to exist anywhere, even if it is still art. I want to make a whole other video about the abject and abject art and the importance of controversy in art and the creation of it. But that's a whole other topic and requires a ton of research, so I will get to that. These digital spaces, no matter their lax rules on content, are also still at risk from physical degradation. The servers that they exist upon will eventually degrade. The crude oil and metal used to make them will run out one day. In the article Ethics and Dilemmas of Art Preservation by the Arctic World Archive,
preserving digital art requires vast amounts of energy. The servers that store our creative memory emit as much CO2 as some nations. Every byte we save has a physical cost, one often invisible to those who click upload. Art preservation, once seen as an act of care, can paradoxically contribute to the degradation of the planet that inspired the art in the first place.
But also, can we just take a second to look at this Arctic bunker of art? Like, is this really the solution that we want? Just putting our art in the earth and hoping for the best? Like, just putting it in the Arctic? Like, is this really the solution, guys? Really?
Their hosts could be shut down. Any number of things could happen to these sites and were left unmoored. Even physical prints are at risk of degradation. It's just a natural part of the cycle of life. And again, I come back to that idea of a chef who watches their meal get eaten. We just kind of have to accept it. And that doesn't feel great. And even with physical copies of digital art, how much of that is an actual true preservation of the original intent of that work? If it was intended to be seen on a screen, printing it out may not produce a true reproduction of that work. We have to consider how people may have placed their colors digitally, if they're RGB or CMYK, and how printing can completely change the way colors appear. And is preservation worth it if every piece of preservation is just a mediocre copy of the original work?
Amalia Donnerstorg, artist and current student at the Conservation Center for the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University, writes in her article, Preserving the Present, Theory and Ethics in the Conservation of Media in Contemporary Paintings, the conservation of recent work is not just about material preservation, but also about maintaining the conceptual integrity of the work. Because the material of contemporary work is often an idea, conservators of these objects become stewards of intangible as well as tangible heritage.
Drives will fill up to the brim or corrupt, and there is only so much space in a hard drive, much as there is only so much physical space that we have to keep art somewhere. Even with my own personal archival efforts, I fully know that there are pieces from way back in my history done in sketchbooks that I chucked in the bin, or on hard drives or laptops that just corrupted and they're just gone. And again, archival isn't about the quality. Sure, I was super young when I made them, but it still matters to me as an artist to show that I went from one place to another. This is why archival worries me. Because if we lose evidence of our digital process, how do we prove the difference between what is generated and what is created? And honestly, I don't have a clean answer to this problem. I wish I did. But I'm just a trans girl with a microphone standing behind a beautiful mural painted by primary school kids at my local school near my house. Do you think this is going to last? Do you think the graffiti is going to last behind it? What do we do? I really don't think there is one perfect way to go about keeping our art for future generations, especially in the digital world. This is the burden of all of us, to accept that there simply will be loss. And I feel like I have to grieve art I haven't even made yet, because I don't know how long it's going to last. But in some way, we have to persevere. We must. For our past, our present, and our future. We must try. Right?
When it does, if it does.
So what do we do? What do we do with all our art? Where does it go? How do we deal with the conundrum of knowing that things we make will be lost? That is unfortunately just how things go. Well, I kind of want to conclude with a philosophy of sorts. Something that has helped me process this honestly really sad real realization. Through this lengthy and daunting process of archiving my work and looking into the ways that we conserve and preserve art, I have grappled with fragility, the rigidity of the systems that we live within, and what society deems as good art. But one thing remains that has only solidified inside of me through this process. I am an artist, and my work deserves a place to be seen, enjoyed, understood, and investigated for as long as I am able for it to be. And so does yours. Regardless of your work's quality, it is the dedication and process of the craft that makes your work important. That is what is impressive about being an artist. It's the fact that you make something. Social media makes us believe that the only things that are deserving of being seen are things that are perfect and have been crafted and shaved into those rigid digital boxes that social media expects us to place ourselves within. We are shipped feeds of perfect bodies and artists who have made it by being on top of the larger system, who have given up a level of integrity to be on top. They are properly and pristinely packaged for consumption. But we aren't like that. We may never be like that. But for that exact reason, we have to strive to preserve every scrap of work that we make. We cannot succumb to the monocultural idea of what is worth our attention. We need to decide that for ourselves. By archiving and preserving our art as best we can in all its strange and uncouth glory, in its unattractiveness and its imperfection, we are actually maintaining a real version of what it means to create and what it means to be human. For it is just as much a part of human history as the footsteps of giants that we walk within. Your work matters, and generations after us need to know that their work matters too, by seeing that the things that they're interested in, the things that were created previously that weren't just perfectly packaged, also matter. So what do we do with our art? We make it. We see it. We devour it. We consume it. And we make again. And in that glorious consumption, we taste, embody, and fuse its essence with our own. Art is not a thing, nor an object, nor data on a machine. It's the experience of you and the alchemy that happens between it and yourself. It is in the moment in which you are called to devour it. The spark of inspiration, imagination, lust, greed, joy, and ecstasy that happens when you engage in art. When you create it, it is the alchemy between your mind, body, and soul made manifest. It is the eternal and external experience of your body and infinite soul seeing itself reflected back. It is something infinite and impossible that ticks away inside of you like the brass clock of a soul. Art is you and your experience with it. So surround yourself with it, increase your collective exposure to it, and touch any piece that you can. Experiment, explore, and engulf yourself within it. Devour it at every moment. Dive deep and feast upon its esoteric matter. Consume and be consumed by it. And may you live deliciously. Or just like jerk off to some banjo and kazooie art, what do I care?
Switching my hips, got me pup drunk off your piss, got me dripping hot when I'm drunk.